Good morning, and welcome to the Vitafoods presentation from the Natural Marketing Institute with data and insights around emotional and cognitive mental health concerns from a consumer perspective. This is Diane Ray speaking, who is Vice President of Strategic Innovation for the Natural Marketing Institute, and we are a wholly owned subsidiary of Research America, Inc. Many of you know us. We've been around for over 30 years at the Natural Marketing Institute, and we specialize in consumer insights and strategic application of consumer data for over 30 years. And the verticals within which we have focused most strongly have been personal health and wellness, sustainability, and healthy aging. And we really are, those verticals have merged over the last few years into a quite complex and dynamic marketplace. And today we're going to be focusing on one aspect of that marketplace. Just so you know quickly, the Natural Marketing Institute is a full-service research firm. We do all kinds of research from market sizing to in-home ethnographies, quantitative, qualitative, everything. Today, we're going to be focusing on the right-hand side of that projection, which is really data that we have developed ourselves. We run annual consumer studies from which we can data mine and track trends and really get a jumping off point for new product development, new business development. So today we'll be focusing on data from three sources. One is the Natural Marketing Institute's Health and Wellness Trended Study. This is our oldest study, has been in place for well over 30 years. Comes with its own custom segmentation, covers a lot of food and bev, some diet and nutrition, a lot of attitudes and behaviors. We'll be focusing extremely a lot on supplements OTC RX database we call SWORD. This is a much deeper dive into nutritional supplements. As you all know, it's been a fast-growing category. The idea of nutrients, nutritional ingredients being added into food and bev, nutritional ingredients being taken as a supplement, the idea of things like herbal medicine, right? That whole industry has been growing and shifting just by leaps and bounds. And we have some trended data there we'll be talking about, as well as our healthy aging study, which is looking at a very holistic approach to health. So not just what's happening with your physical health, but your financial health, your social health, your emotional health. So we've pulled select pieces of data from these three studies for today's conversation. I'd like to set the stage by first talking about kind of two sides to the mental health equation. And as you all know, mental health is very complex, and it is a huge problem. I guess it's a dynamic that's going on right now that is not positive, right? Or it has two sides. There's a positive side saying people are more concerned about, they're aware and are taking action and are taking positive steps to manage their emotional and cognitive health. But there's also, even before the pandemic, just a huge wave of people struggling with mental health. And there's lots of opportunity space here to be offering support and nutritional help in this area. So if we take the left-hand side of this equation, we look at emotional health, we're going to be talking mostly about stress, anxiety, and depression. Now, stress and anxiety are certainly things that we can deal with through, food and bev, through sleep, through supplementation, all kinds of things. Depression is a clinical indication, and as such, supplements are not allowed to manage or treat clinical indications, but it's all connected, and so there are certainly impacts that can be had. On the right-hand side of this equation, we have cognitive health, which looks at mental focus. And mental focus is, interestingly enough, kind of starts at a very young age. It could be related to academics. It could be related to sports. It could be related to job performance, as is concentration. Eventually, we see, memory and age-related cognitive decline coming into the equation. So we're going to look at these two sides of the equation today, and a little bit of what consumers are thinking, how they're acting, what they're taking, and how we might have opportunity space here to grow and actually have social impact at the same time. So focusing on the left-hand side, emotional health. If we look at top two box importance, how important are these two things in maintaining a healthy, balanced lifestyle? This is U.S. data today. We do have this in multiple countries. But we're focusing on the U.S. trended data at this point. So here we've got positive mental attitude, certainly in managing stress, are very high on that list. And top two box, sleep is certainly important as well. And we'll look briefly at the cycle of how you connect sleep to mental stress, to then weight management, to cognitive skills, right? So they are all interrelated, and we tend to break them out into individual pieces. But the consumer needs to be treated holistically. And right now they're aware and they recognize the importance of this mental health. Here we're looking at the gap between the red dot line and the blue dot line, right? And the top line there, the red dots, is looking at how important this is to people. And then the blue dot is how satisfied are they with their emotional health. So as you can see just quickly at a glance, there is a significant gap between satisfaction and importance. And those gaps are most prominent among women. That's a pretty hefty gap, right? 61% say I recognize the importance. 28% say I'm very satisfied with my emotional health. So, and that saying, if mama isn't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? We understand that emotional dissatisfaction, or there's dissatisfaction with emotional health, can have wide-ranging impacts across the whole family. And interestingly enough, while all these gaps are pretty big, Gen X has the biggest gap. And Gen X right now is running late 40s, I think, into like mid 50s or mid to late 50s. So you've got that age group that's under a lot of stress and is very unhappy with their existing emotional health. So there's opportunities certainly across generations, across gender, across ethnic groups, but particularly targeting females and Gen X could be a very interesting place to start. If we look at conditions people say they are currently managing, right? So digestive issues come to the top, and the need to lose weight. And these are pretty prominent because if you're a discomfort with digestion, it's pretty obvious and it's prevalent and it's immediate, right? So that often will come to the top. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, given the pandemic, we've seen stress and anxiety continue to increase over time. If we see here, this is over the past 10 years, stress has gone up 49%, anxiety has gone up 124%. Depression has gone up 68%, right? So these key elements of mental health have gained in prominence, and people are actively taking action to currently manage these issues. This helps give you a relative perspective of where these items fall compared to other things. When you look at that view consumers have of themselves, and we ask consumers of different ages from a list of descriptions, how would you describe yourself? What you've got here is that iGen, which is the under, I forget the exact cutoff right now, probably 27 or something, and under that, right? Stressed, tired, worried, and depressed are very prominent on their lists compared to other generations. You've got stressed under millennials, keeping in mind that millennials are now in their 40s. And then you see those lists, those types of mental health descriptors dropping off as you get older. And it's not that people aren't concerned, but they don't see themselves as quite as stressed or quite as tired, quite as worried, quite as depressed, right? And ironically, this iGen group that is claiming the most mental health concerns are the least likely to have visited a primary care doctor. So they're not going to the doctor. They're not necessarily getting treated for these situations. So that is another big gap that helps, I guess, is probably underpinning what we're seeing as a mental health crisis in the country. Again, that understanding that whole cycle, right? That lack of sleep impacts anxiety, which impacts lack of energy, which can lead to depression, which can lead to stress, right? Those items are all interactive and have to be treated or managed in a holistic sense to see if we're going to have any impact on mental health. What is interesting is if you look at the blue lines here, the blue bars are people who already say I'm managing stress and anxiety, and they're already cognizantly aware that they are not sleeping well, that they are having not enough energy, that they are perhaps having some cognition and memory issues as well. So there's a recognition among the population that these items are interrelated, and they're looking for holistic solutions. If you ask people who are currently managing stress, though the levels that we're seeing as of the end of 2021 are almost the same as the levels we saw during the huge recession in 2007, 2008. So we're reaching a pretty peak performance here where there's a tipping point and there's a crisis point. If we look at the impacts of COVID, we all have experienced it. We've all had to deal with it. We all know that has COVID had a negative impact on my mental health and emotional well-being? Gen Pop says 40%. That is spread out, again, much stronger among younger population and declining a tiny bit as we get older. If we also look at the multifaceted aspects of mental health, and we ask, again, the COVID impact, And this is just looking across different ethnic populations in the U.S. We see that the Hispanic population has a recognition that they have had a lot of impact due to COVID on their mental health. So I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm more anxious than I used to be. I am more stressed. I have an inability to focus or concentrate, right? That is significantly higher due to COVID across different ethnic groups. But in particular, there's an opportunity among the Hispanic population. I don't know if I have to really restate that we're facing a national mental health crisis. Every day, it feels like another young person has, committed suicide or has injured themselves, or we see that the increase in drug use. So this is a significant, social crisis that's happening, and it feels like, what can we do as an industry within the realm of our influence to be able to have a positive impact? And again, the ultimate, stress and anxiety concern is if it does actually result in suicide. And we certainly can't claim that we're going to treat any of these. We can't claim that we're going to solve this problem. But within the realm of our sphere of influence, what can we do to help? And that's really where there is significant opportunity space. If you ask consumers who are currently managing stress and anxiety what they're taking, right, almost half, 45%, say they're taking a prescription drug for stress and anxiety. About 30% are taking supplements, about 18% are taking something OTC, and about 37% are doing nothing. And when we ask about doing nothing, you often will hear people say that they're taking, I might be drinking tea, or I may be following a bedtime ritual to get better sleep, or I'm exercising, right? So these are not necessarily taking an oral solution, food, beverage, supplement, prescription drug, OTC, but they might be taking other actions in their life to manage stress and anxiety. It is important to note that of people who are taking supplements for stress and anxiety, only a quarter of those who are taking them feel they're very effective. So there's a pretty big gap in wanting a solution, a supplement solution, and finding a solution they feel actually works. If you ask people who are taking each of these different ingredients over on the right-hand side of the chart, what are they taking it for? This is the percentage of people who say, I'm using that to treat stress or anxiety or manage my stress and anxiety. And you look at, does CBD, essential oils, is that really the best we can do, right? So that's really the question. And if there are ingredients or nutrients that may have stronger impact or even some kind of clinical support, that message does not appear to be getting out to the consumer market. So again, opportunity space. We see what's in there today, right? We know that consumers are searching for natural solutions, herbal solutions, anything closer to nature. We've all been tracking, certainly plant-based solutions. And when I think about natural, I think about consumers on a continuum standing back to back, right? And two consumers. One is facing backwards to kind of conventional solutions and have made the choice to put more natural products into their diet. They feel like they've taken a big step towards getting healthier and getting closer to nature. The other consumer is facing the other end of that continuum and is looking at, should I be, boiling my own roots? Should I be making my own tinctures? I want to be as close to nature as possible. So they may be in the same spot on what they're consuming, but they're coming from two very different perspectives when it comes to the idea of natural and close to nature. We have a lot of ingredients in the industry, both incorporated certainly into food and bev, also into supplements that are gaining in awareness. There's still a huge gap between what the industry knows, what scientists know, what traditionalists and traditional medicine people know, traditional herbalists, and what the consumer knows. And that gap needs to be bridged if we're going to really get those products into the consumer's hands. And obviously we see things like ashwagandha, moringa, the rhodiolas. We've seen all the nootropics gaining extensively. And mushrooms are, as we all know, are just a hot topic these days. And we see them in pretty much everything. Also dietary focus. Certainly there are dietary solutions. And the prevalence of nutritionists that are places where people go to get data or people go to get advice and guidance can certainly help in some of these areas. So lots of opportunity space. If we take the right-hand side of that original equation and look at cognitive health, here's where there's that interesting piece, right? We talked about focus, concentration, and actual cognition, which all of those can pretty much be measured. Whereas, stress and anxiety may have measurable impacts, but you can't necessarily. It's much more difficult to actually measure stress. We have about 40% of the population says that I'm very, very concerned about losing mental and brain capacity, right? Anyone who's been associated with someone who's actually had, Alzheimer's, dementia, none of those they're all challenging illnesses to manage, and it has a significant impact across the entire family. That concern is highest among women and older women. If we look at people who say, I'm concerned about preventing memory, or I'm concerned about preventing concentration and focus, and who's actually managing or treating, there is a big gap. Part of that gap is when we ask people, how effective do you believe like nutritional supplements are? How effective do you believe certain ingredients are? There's a lack of belief in effectiveness. So there is a huge opportunity to be able to find the science, communicate the science, talk about mechanism of action, be able to build belief if we want to see people who are actually taking stronger action. What's important again, importance versus satisfaction. We still see women are have high importance, dissatisfaction in memory and brain function. And here you start to see that dissatisfaction, that gap, right, spreading among older people. And we all know about age-related cognitive decline. But there's some interesting data we're going to look at in a second that says your optimal brain function for retention and ordering things happens at age 18, which is just a little bit scary, right? If this is from Healthline, a study about where does your brain start to slow down? And actually, you kind of reach a plateau and you stay at that plateau. But they're saying keeping track of details peaks at age 18, which is a scary thought. But the reality is things do change normally over time. Certainly what you do with your diet, what you do with your exercise, what things you're doing to keep yourself mentally at your peak can have an impact on this type of a timeline. And we do see, in this idea of, in the 20s and 30s, we don't see people quite as concerned about memory loss, but we do see people there highly concerned about concentration, focus. We see people wanting a sports competitive edge. They might want a competitive edge in academics. They might want to have a competitive edge in the workplace, right? So they want to be on their game and in the game. Certainly, we see people talking about that, and we see products focusing on that 20 and 30-year-old age group. So brain and cognitive performance is not just an old person's opportunity. Again, what are people doing? You see about a third taking nutritional supplements here. Here in memory retention and mental focus, you see OTC and RX at a much lower rate than we saw them for stress and anxiety. But again, you've got over 40% saying, I'm doing nothing. I'm managing it, but I'm doing it through non-prescription drugs, non-OTC, non-RX. Again, we talked briefly about that effectiveness concern. Here we see, the Gen Pop has had an increase in belief and effectiveness of brain health supplements, which is great. 10 years ago, that was a little bit over 10 years ago, was 44%. We're up to 67%. That is great. But again, as people get older, we see the belief in the effectiveness of those supplements start to go down, which just, I think, kicks into gear. Is there more science that can be had? Can we communicate the science we already have more effectively into the marketplace? So if we see what people are taking for memory retention, so if I say I'm actively treating this, ginkgo biloba is right at the top of that list of things that people currently take. And then you see the list start to drop below 10% pretty quickly. And there's not a lot of science on some of these individual products. And so you always wonder where people are getting their information from. And in some cases, they might have a select source that is pushing them in that direction. Mental focus and concentration, ginkgo's at the top of that as well. But then you start to see an increase in awareness of some of the other products. And it just says to me, as I look at this list, that there's lots of opportunities for nutrients and specific ingredients that have clinical studies behind them, or that have some opportunity or some data supporting their effectiveness to be able to get their message out. So significant populations interested in managing, preventing very few are taking action. And of those that are taking action, it's very widespread over a number of lesser known nutrients. If we look at what's coming out in cognitive health, again, I'm going to start with the right-hand side, right? We see the mushrooms, which we know the natural cognitive health supplement sales reportedly grew 10% toward the end of last year. And this is from SPINS data. Mushrooms is leading ingredient now in natural cognitive health channel. Lion's mane is standing out among mushrooms and is starting to show up in coffees, teas, frozen treats. So it's becoming a pretty widespread ingredient into a lot of different products. You can expect to see that continue to grow. Botanicals, I've said for years that, an herbalist is the best kept secret we have. People want to know about herbal solutions. They believe in the power of plants and the power of science, the power of nature, but they don't know where to start. And with the preponderance of literally hundreds, probably thousands of individual nutrients available in tinctures and pills, etc., they just get confused. And so they need guidance, they need help, they need somebody who can really direct them, and they also need biomarkers, right? So if I take this product for 30, 60, 90 days, am I feeling better, which is the ultimate belief the product works, right? Am I feeling a difference? Am I seeing a difference? Is there something I can measure or ascertain that has improved in my life as a result of taking that product? If not, you're certainly at risk for low repeat. And then you have the phosphatidylserine options here as well. So some of these have stronger science that's visible to consumers. Many have science that just simply hasn't made it out of the lab and into the consumer realm. And again, this is, Vitafoods conference. This is the food and beverage industry. You already know about many of these products that are out there, functional foods and beverages. People are happy to, if I'm consuming a snack product anyway, if I want a bar and it has ingredients that are going to help me, that's an extra plus. It's a little delighter. It's something that makes me choose one brand over the other at the store shelf. So many, many, many opportunities here for growth. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. This was a very fast run through. There's certainly a lot of other slices and dices we could do of this data. Be happy to follow up and answer any questions that might come out of this conversation. So thank you so much for your time today. Have a brilliant day.